Okay, hello everyone. Today we are talking about the aids and what are the dressage aids and how to use the aids. So horses don't understand English, so we can't just talk to them and tell them what we want. So the aids are what we use to communicate with our horses. And there's three main categories of aids. So your legs are the driving aids that get your horse to go forward. Your reins are the restraining aids that basically stop your horse. And then your seat is the translator between your legs and your reins. So the main function of your seat is to absorb the motion of the horse, but it does help to translate either the driving effect of your leg aid or the restraining effect of your rein aid. So if you want to learn more about the aids, be sure to check out in the description below. I have a workshop all about the aids where I give you some specific exercises to work on each of them. And then there's a lecture and also a workshop sheet for you to fill out. So be sure to check that out. And then I'm going to demonstrate to you a little bit how to use these aids, but it's really important, I think, in dressage. Sometimes we make things so complicated that we forget this very simple thing, which is like the leg means go and the rein means stop. It's important to remember that and not overcomplicate it. So to start out with, you always start with your leg as the driving aid. So if I'm standing here and I want my horse to go forward, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close my calf and I want my horse to walk forward. I see a lot of people that for whatever reason, the first thing that they try to do is they try to use their restraining aids. I think so much of what we do in life is with our hands, and so when we ride we tend to overuse our restraining aids. So a lot of times I see people, like, before they even get their horse going forward, they're pulling their horse and trying to get their horse to turn or to do something with their reins. So you always start with your leg. Your leg is the driving aid. When you put your leg on, you want that aid goes to the horse's hind leg. So your leg should be talking to the horse's hind legs. So if I'm at the halt here, the first thing I'm going to do is close my leg, which should talk to her hind leg and get her to step forward. Now, when my horse steps forward, it's really important then that the second my horse is going, I'm thinking about my seat. So my seat is following this walk motion of the horse. So as I'm walking here, my hips and my pelvis are kind of swinging from back to front. In the walk, there's a back to front, and there's also a little bit of a side to side motion. So my hips are swinging from back to front and then also from side to side. When we talk about the driving aids, it's really important the timing of your aids. So if I'm just walking along here, I don't have a lot of pressure in my heel or in my spur just when I'm walking, because when I ask my horse to trot, that's when I'm going to close my calf and then use my heel or my spur. So I'm going to close my calf and then get the horse to trot. And then with the driving aids, it's important that when your horse goes forward, really, Levi, when your horse goes forward, that then you push your lower leg off. So the timing of your driving aids is super important. So here, my driving aids are neutral. Now my driving aids are on. Now my driving aids are off. And I actually took my driving aids off before I could even say it out of my mouth. So it's really important, the release of your driving aids. One of the most common mistakes that I see with the driving aids are two. One is riders that are just clamped all the time with their legs. So if your lower leg is clamped on like this all the time, you're not going to have an effective driving aid, because if your leg's already on all the time, your horse basically just thinks that your leg is a part of the saddle, and the saddle is a kind of pressure that the horse just ignores because it's there all the time. So you don't want to be clamping on with your legs. Your knee and your upper thigh should always be supporting your seat, but your lower leg needs to be able to go on and then go off when your horse actually moves forward. Another big mistake that I see with the driving aids is riders that try to get their horse to go from the seat. So your seat is not a driving aid. So if you're at the halt here and you want your horse to go forward, like going like this in the saddle is not going to get your horse to go forward. So you need to close your leg to get your horse to go forward, and then your hips have to follow that motion. Just walk, Uma. So again, at the walk, if I want my horse to trot or to walk faster, I'm not going to pump with my seat like this. Because if I'm pumping with my seat, you see how it actually makes her go slower. So if I want my horse to go, I'm going to close my leg to get my horse to go forward. Your seat is never a driving aid. I see this a lot at the canter. So when you're cantering your horse, it's really important that your seat is following that canter motion. So my seat is swinging from back to front as my horse is cantering here, but I'm not keeping my horse cantering by driving. If I start pumping and moving too much, you see the first thing that happens is my horse breaks. So it's really important that if you're cantering and you want your horse to go, you got to use your driving aid. So like I'm going to kick her and say, hey, go. But I'm not going to use my seat to get her to go. So my seat is the translator in the sense that when she goes bigger, so if I ask for bigger, 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 my hips have to move bigger as my horse goes bigger. But my seat doesn't initiate that bigger canter, and that's really important to remember. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, so the last aid is the restraining aid. And again, it's really important that the last aid you use is your reins or the restraining aid. So many riders use their reins first, and that's really incorrect. So it's always the sequence of aids is leg, seat, hand. So your reins help to support your seat to get your horse to collect or to come back a little bit. So let's say, for example, that I'm cantering, and so my hips are following the motion of the horse, and I want to make a transition to the trot. So the first thing when I'm going to use my restraining aids is that I actually start with my seat. So I think about moving my hips a little less. I think about sitting a little heavier. And then with my reins, I think about doing half halt, soften, half halt, soften. So at the canter, when you use your restraining aids, when you use your rein aids, it should always be on the upbeat of the canter when the horse's mane is flying up. So it would be like now, half halt, half halt, half halt, trot. So I always start, before I use my restraining aids, I start with my seat. That's a little bit different than the driving aids. So I always start first with my seat, and then my restraining aids, it's never just like pulling. So it's always like half halt, give, half halt, half halt, half halt, half halt. Good girl. If you just pull with your restraining aids, so like if I'm trotting here and I just start like pulling as hard as possible, it's not going to be effective. So like I'm pulling really hard and she's just still going. She's just pulling harder back against me. So whenever you use your restraining aids, it's really important that it's like half halt, sit, half halt, sit, half halt, sit. And that whenever you use your restraining aids, your rein aids, that you're also supporting that with your seat. So when I'm half halting there, I'm kind of like tightening my tummy and not moving quite as much with my seat. So I hope that this helps you guys to understand a little bit more about how to use your aids. And using your aids, I think that's really something that evolves over time. So really top riders are very sophisticated and good about the timing and the balance and the feel of when they use their aids and how they apply their aids, and that is how they are able to communicate with invisible aids with their horse. So as you become a better rider, the more you ride, your aids become more and more sophisticated and more subtle with your horse. And yeah, check out the link in the description if you want to learn more about the aids, and we go more into depth in that workshop. But just remember this, that the legs mean go, the reins mean stop, and you don't want to overcomplicate it. You always want to stick to that basic principle, and then that your seat is super important, and your seat really always has to be following and absorbing the horse's motion. So if you sit like super stiff and you're bouncing in your horse and you have no motion in your seat, then that's going to make your horse tense and make your horse move not as well. So it's important to consider that. That's it for today. Be sure to like my video and my channel and give us a thumbs up. Okay, the end.